There is a kind of prayer that doesn't sound like prayer. It doesn't have beautiful words. It doesn't have structure or scripture or the steady voice of someone who has it together. It sounds more like drowning, like a person going under for the third time, reaching up with one hand, grabbing at anything. That's the prayer that saved her son's life. Her name was Diane, and for 11 months she prayed that prayer every single morning before the sun came up. In that kitchen, at that table, with cold coffee and shaking hands, while her son was somewhere she couldn't reach him, doing things she couldn't stop, living a life that was pulling him closer to the edge of something she was terrified he would not come back from. She didn't know if God was listening. She prayed anyway. This is the story of what happened next. Marcus had been her miracle from the beginning. She'd been told at 29 that she would likely never carry a pregnancy to term. 3 losses in 2 years, each one a little piece of her heart that didn't grow back. She and her husband Robert had started to make peace with a different kind of life, a quieter one, just the two of them, built around the absence of something they had stopped letting themselves want. And then Marcus came. 11 days late, 7 pounds 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and eyes that looked like he already knew something. The doctors called it unexpected. Diane called it answered prayer. She brought him home and sat with him in the rocking chair in the room she had painted and repainted 3 times over 3 years, and she whispered to him, "You are wanted. You are loved. You are not an accident." She said those words to him every night for years. He grew up kind. That was the thing people always noticed first. Not that he was smart, though he was, not that he was funny, though he could make a whole room laugh, but that he was kind in a way that wasn't common in teenage boys. He held doors. He remembered people's names. He checked on his friends when something was wrong. He was the boy other mothers pointed to and said, "You raised him right." Diane never took the credit. She knew where that came from. Then Marcus went to college, and somewhere in the first year, in a way that happens so gradually you don't see it until it's already too late, something started to shift. She noticed it first in the phone calls, how they got shorter, how his voice sounded different, with a flatness to it that she hadn't heard before. She noticed it when he came home for Thanksgiving and picked at his food and laughed at the wrong moments and left 3 times to take phone calls outside in the cold. She asked Robert what he thought. Robert said it was just college, just adjustment. That all kids went through something in those first years away. Diane wanted to believe him. By spring semester, she couldn't anymore. Marcus had stopped going to class. She found that out not from him, but from an email she wasn't supposed to see, forwarded from the university's academic office. She called him, and he told her everything was fine. She heard in the background voices and music at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, and everything was clearly not fine. Over the summer she learned the rest of it piece by piece, the way you learn terrible things, never all at once, always in fragments, each one worse than the last. The drinking that had become something harder. The friends who were not really friends. The money that had gone somewhere she didn't want to think about. The arrest, minor, expunged, but an arrest that Robert found out about from a family friend before Marcus told them himself. She and Robert had the kind of fights that leave a mark. Not over Marcus. They never fought about what to do because they both wanted the same thing. They fought because fear does things to people, because watching your child destroy himself is a specific kind of helplessness that has nowhere to go, and it has to go somewhere. She tried everything she could reach. She called him. She drove to his apartment unannounced once, and he wasn't there, and she sat outside the building for 2 hours waiting, and he never came. She wrote him letters, real ones, on paper, that she didn't know if he read. She connected with his college roommate, a decent young man named Tyler, who was as worried as she was, and said he'd do what he could. Nothing moved. Marcus was 20 years old and disappearing in real time, and Diane was standing at the edge of it with her hands full of nothing. The morning she sat down at that kitchen table before sunrise, the first morning of what would become 11 months of early mornings, she had just gotten off the phone with Robert's sister, who had seen Marcus at a gas station 40 miles from home and said he looked thin, said he looked like someone she almost didn't recognize. Diane put the phone down, made the coffee, sat at the table, and started to pray. She will tell you she wasn't full of faith that first morning. She'll tell you she was full of fear, which is a different thing entirely, and that she prayed out of desperation the way you'd press on a wound, not because you're sure it's going to help, but because you have to do something with your hands. "God, I don't know where he is right now," she said. Not out loud at first, just in her mind, in that quiet internal voice that feels both like your own and like something more. "I don't know if he's safe. I don't know if he's eating. I don't know if he remembers who he is." She stopped, pressed her hands harder against the table. "But you know where he is. You can see him right now, wherever he is, and I can't. So I'm asking you, please don't take your eyes off him. Please be in whatever room he's in. Please be the thing that's between him and the worst version of this." She prayed for specific things. That he would think of home. That someone good would cross his path. That the door he needed to walk through would open at exactly the right moment. She prayed against the things she couldn't name, the shadows around her son that she could feel without being able to see. Some mornings the words came easily. Some mornings she sat at that table and couldn't get a single sentence out, and she just let the silence be the prayer. Just her presence, held out like an open hand. She read later that the Holy Spirit intercedes with groanings too deep for words. She believed that. She believed that on the mornings she had nothing, something was still being said on her behalf. She never stopped. 11 months. Every morning before the sun came up. Cold coffee, shaking hands. A mother who refused to let go. Robert would find her there sometimes, coming downstairs before work, and he would put his hand on her shoulder without a word. Eventually, he started sitting with her. They didn't always pray out loud together. Sometimes they just sat. Two parents in the dark, holding a vigil, staying close to something they couldn't touch. They were not going to stop. The call came on a Wednesday in March. Diane was at work. She taught 4th grade, had for 18 years, and there was a particular mercy in having 26 9-year-olds to be present for every day, something that required her full attention and pulled her out of her own head in a way nothing else could. She was walking her class back from the library when her phone vibrated. She saw Marcus's name and stepped to the side and answered, "Mom." Just that word. Just Mom. But she heard it immediately, something different in his voice. A texture she hadn't heard in a long time, something broken open. "I'm here, baby," she said. There was a long pause. She could hear him breathing. "I think I need help," he said. I think I've been really lost, Mom. I don't know how I got here. I don't know how any of this happened." Her back was against the wall of the school hallway. She slid down it until she was sitting on the floor. "I had this moment last night," Marcus continued, his voice unsteady. "I was sitting alone in this apartment and it was 3 a.m. and I felt this thing, like a hand on my shoulder, like someone was right there. And I thought about you. I thought about when I was little and you'd say those things to me at night. You remember what you used to say?" She couldn't speak. "You are wanted. You are loved. You are not an accident." His voice broke on the last word. "I heard it, Mom. I heard it like you were right there in the room. And I just started crying and I couldn't stop and I knew I had to call you." Diane was crying too, sitting on the floor of a school hallway, not caring one bit. "Come home," she said. "Just come home." He was in their driveway by 8 o'clock that evening. Robert opened the front door, and Marcus walked in. Thinner than he'd been, tired in a way that went all the way down, and Robert put his arms around his son in the doorway and held on. And Marcus let him. He put his face against his father's shoulder and let himself be held like a little boy, like someone who had been carrying something crushing and had finally found a place to put it down. Diane stood in the hallway and watched and let herself feel the full weight of what she was seeing. Her son was home. He went into a recovery program 2 weeks later, a faith-based one, which had not been the plan, but which Marcus chose himself because of what he felt that night at 3 a.m, because of a hand on his shoulder in an empty room, because of words spoken over him in a rocking chair 20 years before that somehow found their way back to him in the dark. The road was not straight. Recovery never is. There were hard months and setbacks and moments where Diane had to pray all over again from the beginning. But Marcus stayed. He kept walking forward. He got a sponsor. He got a job. He called home every Sunday. Slowly, like a field coming back after a long winter, her son returned. 2 years after that Wednesday phone call, Marcus stood at the front of his recovery group and told his story. Diane was in the back row. He'd asked her to come. She'd driven 4 hours, and she would have driven 40. She watched her son, 22 years old, clear-eyed, steady, stand in front of a room full of people who knew what it was to be lost and tell the truth about where he'd been and what had found him. He talked about the night with the hand on his shoulder. He talked about calling his mother. He talked about a woman who got up before the sun every morning for 11 months and refused to stop praying for a kid who was doing everything he could to disappear. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Afterward, a young man, 19, first week of the program, still shaky, came up to Diane. He didn't say much. He just said, "I hope my mom prays like you." She took his hand. "Tell her to," she said. "Tell her not to stop." She thought about all the mornings, all the cold coffee, all the words she prayed into the dark, not knowing if they were reaching anywhere. Every single one of them had landed. I don't know what you're carrying today. Maybe you're a mother like Diane. Maybe you have a child, a son, a daughter, someone you love like your own, who is lost right now. Not lost in a way anyone can fix with a phone call or a plan. Lost in a way that keeps you up at night and has you sitting at tables before sunrise with cold coffee and nothing left in your hands but prayer. I want to tell you something, and I need you to hear it. Your prayers are not disappearing. They are not floating away into an indifferent sky. They are not wasted on a God who isn't listening. Every word you have prayed over that person, every desperate, broken, beautiful middle-of-the-night prayer is being held. It is doing something you cannot see yet. It is working in rooms you cannot enter, in moments you don't know about, at 3 a.m, in an apartment 40 miles away, where your child is sitting alone and suddenly feels a hand on their shoulder. You may not be there, but God is. That is what Diane Harmon knows. That is the testimony she would put her name on without hesitation. Not that she was a perfect mother, or a perfect prayer warrior, or that she had enough faith every morning. She didn't. Some mornings she had almost none. But she came to the table anyway. She opened her hands anyway. She said, "I don't know where he is, but you do," and she kept saying it day after day until the morning the phone rang. Don't you stop. Wherever you are in the waiting, day 3 or month 11 or year 4. Don't you stop. The God who knit your child together before they took their first breath has not looked away. He knows their name. He knows exactly where they are. And he is moved by a mother on her knees in a dark kitchen in a way that changes things, in a way that reaches into places love alone cannot go. Keep praying. Keep coming to the table. Keep leaving the light on. The call is coming.